So I think some of you know me anyway, some of us have met over the years, but I've worked in the outdoor industry for over 25 years, and I suppose specifically around the mountain leader and the RCI qualification process. I gained my awards like 20 odd years ago, and have been actively working in those fields and those environments since then. I've also been a provider for the mountain leader in the SPA/RCI award for quite a few years now, having delivered something like over 300 ML courses, and I'm not really sure about the RCI, but somewhere in the region of 120 over the years. So I've kind of got a bit of an idea, hopefully, about how mountain training wishes us to deliver the award around the syllabus, but also perhaps more importantly, like what it's like to work, and how the syllabus matches against work in those roles. I suppose the title around like the myths of like ML and RCI is designed really because over the years I've come across lots of great stories and sort of myths, I suppose, and very big legends about the awards and sort of misconceptions, I guess, in many respects about how people have interpreted the syllabus or what they've heard previously. And so I'm always keen to sort of like support people through the process and to address sort of any sort of rumours that are incorrect, because it's quite often third hand or fourth hand, and as they flow down the chart they obviously get a bit more elaborated and aren't particularly true. So happy to sort of try, if you have any sort of like things, oh, I've heard this, I've heard that, throw them up on the chat and I'll definitely tell you if that's true or not, or whether it fits the syllabus, etc, etc. So I've got 60 minutes or 54 minutes. So firstly, it feels like I'm on a show host at the moment. So Sarah L. I'll just read out the questions as well and then I'll answer them. So first one from Sarah. How long does the registration last, and is it recommended to complete a refresher before assessment if it's been over 4 years? So I'm just looking down at my notes because I sort of went through all these earlier. So registration for any award is for life. So once you register for the ML and the RCI, then it's a lifetime award. You don't have to re-register. In terms of going on to doing a refresher before assessment, so you've talked about it being 4 years since you've done your training course. Well, there's a couple of ways, a couple of options here. So if you go onto the Mountain Leader training website and you click on to the appropriate award and drill down, you'll find like this, the ML or RCI handbook, but also underneath that is a skills checklist. So you can click on this checklist and go through the checklist, and that will give you an idea where you are at. If you go on to a CPD sort of day, then like any or a refresher day, then any CPD is obviously clearly valuable. I think perhaps more only is it just about confirming where your skill is at and refreshing and picking up any new ideas, but it will also kind of give you perhaps extra confidence towards your assessment. So, and I think that's kind of like why a lot of people come to refresher courses. They've already got the skill, they know where they're at, and it's confirmation really that they're ready for their assessment. And it's more of a confidence boost, I guess, more than anything else. So I suppose if you're kind of keen to go for a refresher, then turn up with all your questions, turn up with all your little blitz, your little areas that you feel like you need to ask questions or like you need to develop on, and like throw it all into the mix. We'll see what you've got on the day, and then we'll again, a bit like tonight, I suppose, we'll kind of help you with questions and answer those questions and give you the confidence that you're ready for your assessment. Second question Sarah asked was, if you fail on one section of the assessment or an area requires development, does that mean you do not pass the whole assessment? So good question. So in the defer process, you can only, you get deferred essentially on like key elements of the syllabus. So, navigation is a key element. So there are separate elements within that key part. So for example, within navigation, there's like use of compass, there's like contour interpretation and a host of other things. So there could be separate elements within there that you could be deferred on. Contour interpretation is probably the most common one being deferred on the Mountain Leader award. In terms of the type of defer, there's two types of defer. So one's an administrative defer and one's a technical defer. An administrative defer is paperwork. So maybe that you've turned up and you don't have a current first aid certificate. So you need to go away and do a current, and update your first aid certificate. It might be that your logbook hasn't been produced, and therefore we're unable to see the minimum requirements. So that would be like an administrative defer, and essentially there's no time stamp against that. So if you were to go away and sort your logbook out within the following week, then we could process the award for you, and you would complete the award within that following week. If, on the other hand, it was a technical defer, so like something like a contour interpretation, for example, then you would have to have a 3-month period of like going away, a minimum of 3-month period of going away and consolidating on the area, and then rebooking at a later date for however long. It's important, I think, to sort of highlight the fact that the sort of defer process, I don't know, the defer word is quite a harsh word in my opinion. You know, there's better ways of wording it perhaps. So I think what would happen though towards at the end of the ML assessment would be that we would sit down and we would highlight parts of the syllabus that we feel that you are not at the standard. We then have to write a plan for you. So we actually have to identify which bits of those syllabus we're deferring you against. We then have to create an action plan for you. So we sit down and write down an action plan for you. And then we would then also identify on reassessment what that day or half day would look like. So when you come back, what exactly would you be coming back for? So if it was round contour interpretation, then we would create an action plan around how you could go and improve your contour interpretation. And then on the reassessment element, what that day would look like. So essentially go out on the hill for a number of hours on a set scale of map, 1 to 25, 1 to 50, 1 to 40, and specifically look at contour interpretation. So Sarah was on some good questions here. So are you receive feedback throughout the assessment of areas you need to show, or if on day 2 you have not passed, will they tell you or leave it till day 5? Yeah, it's a good one, that. It's something I hear quite a lot about actually, and I think go back a few years and there were quite a few assessments that you really didn't get much feedback until the end of the week really, which isn't really ideal. So there's continual feedback. There should be continual feedback. So, you know, there's a handbook that you all have access to. As providers, we have guidance notes as well. So the guidance notes is sort of a further handbook for us about how to interpret the syllabus in a bit more detail. And it gives us quite clear guidance on certain elements. And it does talk about feedback. So we are expected to give you feedback throughout the whole process. Now it doesn't sort of stipulate about giving you feedback on every leg, for example, but you should definitely finish each day of any assessment with a clear understanding of where you are, what's happened during the day, where your strengths were, if there's any areas of development, and what tomorrow would look like. So by the time we get to the end of the assessment, there's not really much of a discussion that needs to happen on a pass or not, because like we all know we're all in the same situation. So it should be quite clear to everyone. So just jumping across. Oh, come on. The other thing I was going to say on that, because I've just saw a message up from Steve, so I'll come back to you in a second, Steve. But another thing I've just seen, so I've just going to mention was that it's also a holistic process as well. So the process of like assessing, and I'll describe this a bit more, I suppose, in a bit. But specifically like on an ML assessment, where we're with you for 5 days, you know, we're not looking at like you are going to make errors through the week. You know, navigation is a process where we all go into the mountains in whatever conditions we have, and we do make errors sometimes. You know, there's no way that I can honestly put my hand on my heart and tell you where I am exactly on which contour line the whole year round in whatever weather. It's just not real. The reality is that sometimes I'm not too sure and I'm a bit misplaced, but I've got the skills to like relocate quite quickly. And so that's kind of like the nature of the assessment. It needs to be a holistic process over the week. So if you have an error during, you know, day 1, for example, then we have another 4 days to sort of like work out what's going on. Was it just like a bit of nerves, or was there something else going on that we need to address? And then we'll work with you to address that over those 4 days. So it's certainly not, you know, an error is held against you for the week. So Steve just asked me about if you have access to the guidance notes for us. That's a good question. And Will's just put something up, which I'm just going to quickly check. Yeah, okay. So Will, you've just gone straight through to the public area, which is the ML handbook and skills checklist and so on, which is available for everyone. And then the guidance notes is specifically for us. So yeah, it's a good question that, but we'll happily chat about it. You know, like tonight, I'm happy, there's no, happily chat about individual elements of it. So when questions come up like this, like we've been presented tonight, that allowed, those guidance notes allowed us to sort of like be able to make better decisions on, you know, the pathway we have. We also have, access to all technical officers as well. So if we do have things that we're not too sure of, and there's been lots of situations every year, or it's probably a situation once a year that I'm not too sure of, even though I've been doing this for nearly 20 years now in a sort of provider role, that I have access to a technical officer. So someone actually directly from mountain training who I can speak to on the phone or go and visit in the office, talk through the issues, and then they can give us further guidance. So there's a real big support network for all of us. Next question from Sarah: how much of your assessment is based on knowledge for your flora and fauna, and what's the best way to develop this? Yeah, this is a good one. This is a good one. So I tend to talk more about mountain engagement. So there's a lot of things in the mountains that are of interest to us. So I'm not a flower spotter, so I don't go into the mountains, and I don't go and take people and guide them up the big hills and sort of point things out to them specifically like flowers. But what I do have is a whole range of information. So if people are interested in things that are going on around us and they ask me questions, then I can answer them. And I think on the ML process, I think there's a lot of sort of direction and also focus on this one specific subject. But think of it perhaps as mountain engagement. So when I go onto the mountains, people will ask me, those people who are interested will ask me things that they see. So it could be something that's beautiful on the ground. It could be an industrial building. It could be a national park Land Rover going past us. It could be the sheep on the farm on the hills. It could be the farmer on his quad bike racing across the top of a 1,000-meter mountain. And these are the things that people see and they kind of go, oh, what's that? And so like, I can answer them that. So rather than perhaps like specifically think about the flora and fauna, think about all the things that are part of the mountain. You know, we're all here tonight because we have passion for the mountain in some way or another. And so the other things, you know, the other subjects that we could probably talk about would be conservation, access, like history, how the land is used, and all these other parts. So perhaps like, you know, take it forward and just like have a bit of surface knowledge in all of these areas. So, you know, a little bit about the national park, a little bit about the people who own the land and whose land we're on. So around here in North Wales, for example, we predominantly have a lot of National Trust land, and that's a really good topic to talk about. We have a lot of tenant farmers, for example, and we have a huge industrial era of the state quarries, for example. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Have a look around, have a bit of surface knowledge and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, have a bit of knowledge about National Park, National Trust, how do they work together, have a bit of knowledge about some of the pretty flowers that are about to come out. What does sheep farming do in North Wales, for example? And then quite often you'll find something of real interest to you. So for me, it's the industrial area that's happens here, the quarries and so on. And then you'll probably have a lot more detailed knowledge in those areas. In terms of how to get that knowledge, then, or how to develop that knowledge, then there's plenty of good books out there. I mean, the internet's brilliant, it's a marvelous tool these days, but in terms of the flora and fauna specifically, Mike Rain has done a really good book, Nature of Snowdonia, which I'm sure is, yeah, people are fairly familiar with. And there are similar books to that. There are, Paul Gannon, Geology, Rock Trails, has done a variety of rock trails books around the UK. And then there's also CPD opportunities. So through the MTA, you can kind of do workshops through those sort of individuals. So hopefully there's quite a few options. But there's also like things like phone apps. You know, there's a lot of really good phone apps. I mean, the Flora and Fauna phone app is quite a good one. You know, it costs a couple of quid, has an identification process on there, tells you something about it. iNaturalist is an amazing app which is free. You can pay, you can sign up for it and pay a bit more, but you can literally take a photograph of a flower, and if as long as you've got a 4G signal, it will kind of give you an option of what it might be and tell you something about it. It's a phenomenal tool. And there's lots of other things, you know, ideology and so on. So there's lots of great ways of getting this information. And I suppose, you know, either go onto the hill and take photographs and then go home and research it, or go on the hill with your phone and take photographs, and you might get an immediate response to what those things might be. So yeah, really good, really good. Okay, next one. So again from Sarah, how long does our presentation have to be and in what detail? Good question. Yeah, this is definitely one of those myths. So there's nothing in the syllabus that requires you to do a presentation. So although providers do use it as a tool to gain information from you, so some do and some don't. So I guess the thing to do, like if you're not keen on, you know, standing in front of your peer group and doing a presentation, then you need to sort of do your homework and ask providers and, you know, who does what. So, you know, a good portion of us will do it on the hill. So we have like a group discussion around many topics, and it's a shared sort of like learning, it's shared sharing of ideas, sharing of like knowledge and so on. And then others will sort of give you specific titles or titles of your choosing, and you'll need to turn up and pre-armed for your assessment to do a presentation. So, you know, I've certainly come across people who are more nervous about the presentation than navigating at night in the mountains. So it's a good question, but it's not part of the award. But some providers will choose to use a presentation type tool to help them gain more information from you. Okay, I've got another question from Steve, which I'll come back to you in a bit, Steve. Okay, I think just drop that one in later. Okay, so moving on. So hopefully, Sarah, that's answered some of your questions. If it hasn't, then just drop any things that you want to kind of me to come back to. But hopefully that's helped you. Dave Brown. So firstly, how is the candidate's knowledge of flora, fauna, geology tested? If you don't do a talk on the hill, is there a written test at all? So I've probably covered that in some detail there. But in terms of like, if there's no presentation, then sort of alluded to sort of chatting on the hill. So mostly like for me, for example, we kind of go out and we observe and we discuss things that we see on the hill. So quite often it'd be like your leg, you'll be leading the leg, and I'll just ask you to find something of interest on that leg. So it could be anything, you know, it could be something that we pass, it could be something about geology you want to share, or glaciation or whatever. So it's just about sharing your passion for the mountains and whatever you know. And, you know, for me, I quite often keep the steam going over the whole, or as long as we can over the week. And then when you run out of ideas, we'll kind of like add load more in for you. So, so that's kind of like how I do it. And it seems to work quite well. A lot of providers definitely will do some sort of question paper. There's lots of things in the syllabus that we don't necessarily have time to go in depth with, or find appropriate times to sort of go and talk about it on the hill. So, you know, things like background knowledge, for example. So a paper gives us the opportunity to ask those sort of questions, and then like we'll often do it perhaps towards the end of the day, like come back in, have a cup of tea somewhere, and sort of like do a round robin around the table and sort of do the answer, so the question paper in a learning environment. Hopefully, you know, sharing ideas. Lots of people will do more. Some people will do more research or have more interest in some areas, and so we'll, you know, it's a good opportunity to sort of share that knowledge. So, you know, just as an example, for example, it's late in the Monday afternoon. So general knowledge, a bit of map stuff, a bit of weather, and a bit of river crossings is kind of all I cover on my question paper. And then everything else around the mountains specifically is done on the hill. So hopefully that answers that for you. So a second one from Dave. This is a good one. I recently read an account online of a successful candidate's experience of assessment last year in the Lakes. It would appear that the assessor had quite a prescriptive approach to assessment along the lines of a 3 strikes and you're out, regardless of what element of the program it was. Therefore, do assessors approach pass, defer, fail in a different way, or are there clearly defined criteria for them to follow? Yeah, good question, that. So we use the handbook like yourselves, and then the guidance notes that I spoke to you. So, I mean, the guidance notes is one of several tools that we have. So, as a provider, we are expected to attend a meeting, a providing meeting, update, whatever you wish to call it, every couple of years. And that entails us going to a room full of people like myself and listening and engaging with mountain training, specifically whichever board we work for, and talking like this, you know, around sort of like questions and working out where mountain training wants us to deliver it, how they want us to deliver it, and making sure that we go away with a shared view of how that's going to happen. So, and then we also have a moderation process as well. So, you know, I would hope that, you know, as providers, we are generally working to, you know, a very similar standard. I think it's important to sort of say, well, for me anyway, I think it's important to say, you know, we're all after the same thing as you are. You know, we are here to support you through the training and the assessment process. And the thing that we're all after is you gaining the award. The award is a brilliant award for so many good reasons. I mean, it's kept me in work for like 20 odd years, and it's taken me to sort of so many great places. But, you know, our role is generally here to support you, to give you the opportunities on the assessment process to demonstrate the skill that you have, for us to sort of confirm that your skill is at the right place, for us to perhaps like tweak it a little bit, maybe like show you some other ways you can make it more efficient. And it's all based against syllabus. So, you know, that's kind of like all we can do. Let me just flip the notes over. And I suppose like the bottom line is we're just preparing you for the role of becoming a mountain leader. So again, you know, a bit like the defer word, I'm not massively keen on the assessment word as such. I prefer, you know, to sort of think about those 5 days as an extended learning where, you know, in total, we have 11 days with you to help you prepare for the role of a mountain leader, because without a doubt, it is, you know, a really good role and it's a brilliant job. But it has its moments. And, you know, I go back a number of years and I can remember making all sorts of daft mistakes as a mountain leader, thinking I knew a lot of things. And I generally didn't. And I learned quite hard, I suppose. And so, you know, I have this opportunity now to present you with an opportunity to become one of these, you know, great ambassadors in the hill, I suppose, but perhaps with not making the mistakes that I did 20 years ago, which were kind of pretty foolish. You know, walking the wrong way of a group for an hour really didn't go down too well, but that's kind of what happened in that time. So yeah, so preparing you for the role, extended learning, I guess, but you need to turn up and demonstrate some skills, and we'll like confirm that and help you with it. So I know I've probably gone around the houses a little bit on that question. I suppose it's the actual process, the syllabus is delivered in our style. So I guess that's why a lot of folk do research on providers. Like I say, I'd hope that most of us are sort of delivering it in a pretty similar way, in a pretty similar method. There'll be little things. So some providers do a presentation, for example, and some will do it on the hill. But in terms of that sort of specific thing, 3 strikes are out. I can't answer that exactly, but yeah, I guess that's why you do your research, to work out who you wish to go with. Thanks, Dave, for that. So Ryan, we've met somewhere. I can't remember. I'm just looking for your face. So Ryan talked about on a night nav, is it generally 1 to 25, or are different scales used? Yeah, good question. So it's pretty much always a 1 to 25 map. So I think if you were to do a night nav or poor visibility sort of evening, or 1 to 50 or 1 to 40, that would be quite adventurous. So yes, don't waste down on a 1 to 25. And well, I say normally it's done at 125, and probably in a small area. I mean, I guess there's two ways that I would approach it. If we have like the weather we have now, which I'm looking at the window, I'm quite jealous of. But if we have the weather we had now, then it would be lovely, you know, if we could, to go in and maybe, you know, pitch camp and then go to the summit and then night nav off the summit back to the tents. That would be like brilliant, you know, watch sunset go down off the summit. It'd be amazing. But chances are this is North Wales and default weather doesn't really, it's not normally like this. So chances are you'll probably pitch tents, stay in a tent, might pour with rain, and then leg it out a bit later on when it's a bit darker, and probably do some sort of fairly small area and do some sort of micro nav. It's essentially like night nav is poor visibility. It's about simulating poor vis. So we just need to make sure that you can measure accurately off the map a bearing and distance, and then you can apply that on the ground. You know, can you walk on a bearing over a distance and accurately just do distance traveled? Okay, and then obviously sometimes, you know, a lot of obstacles pop up within those. So it could be a bog or it could be a little rocky step or whatever, and you just need to negotiate those as you see fit. But it's all about, can you just walk on a straight line on the bearing and negotiate any obstacles in the way. So Ryan's next one was, is an overhand with a stopper best for belay multiple clients, or just an overhand and ask competent other to adjust? I've heard good and bad things about the stopper. So this is looking at the hazards of like steep ground, and then this idea of using the rope. So if I just took the overhand and the stopper, yeah, good question. So syllabus talks about an appropriate knot, and that's it. So, you know, there are a couple of knots we could use in this scenario, and an overhand knot is totally appropriate, and an overhand knot with a stopper is totally appropriate. My advice to you would be to tie the knot that you're most familiar with. So, you know, there are, like I said, there are other knots you could use. So if you're familiar with other knots and they're safe, then that will be fine. Think of it perhaps like this. So, you know, on the assessment, there is obviously an amount of pressure, which is self-induced pressure. You know, I'd like to think that we sort of have a style about us that doesn't sort of put lots of pressure on you, but rather is like engaging and encouraging. But if you think about how that would feel, and then you need to then put some sort of belay together and tie some knots and stuff, and the wind's howling and it's raining, and you know, we all want to be home in the cafe or something, then that's kind of how these knots become undone, you know, how you don't tie good knots. So my advice to you would be, go with the knot that you are most familiar with, okay? And that's in a working context. You know, if you ever had to use, you know, hopefully you wouldn't, but if you ever had to use this sort of type of setup in a working context, it would most likely be in those sort of conditions. And then you're going to have, like, you know, a number of paying clients and all those eyes upon you. So if you fumble your knot and you're worried about which one to tie at that stage, it's too late. So, you know, I keep coming back to this thing, it's just familiar. So Ryan, if you want to use an overhand, that's cool. If you want to use an overhand with a stopper, that would also be appropriate, okay? In terms of like getting a competent other to adjust, yeah, that could be part of your that could be part of the situation, definitely. And I think you hit the key word, competent. So someone who, you know, you have confidence in their ability to tie or adjust that knot, and that would be appropriate, yeah. So cheers, Ryan. I'm just checking the questions coming through, and I'll keep coming back to those later. Okay, cool. So Lizzie, over to you. A couple of good ones. These are about the RCI. So do you have to be good at bouldering for the RCI? Good question. So define good, I suppose. Define good, you know, I think if I was to use myself as a place to start with first, you know, I'm not a boulderer. I enjoy going cragging and so on. I'm not a boulderer. I don't go to a piece of rock in the middle of nowhere with a mattress and jump around for a few hours. but I can go if I want to, and I can go to the wall and boulder if I want to. So I understand the principles, I understand the grading, and I understand what I can do and I can't do. So I guess where I'm going with this is, for the process of the RCI, is be comfortable with bouldering and using a bouldering wall. So yeah, know how the sport works, and so on. It is in the scope of the scheme. You know, part of the scope is to allow you to take people to a specific bouldering wall, for example, and look after them there. Beyond that, though, you know, bouldering in itself is brilliant for personal skills. I mean, it gives you a lot of awareness of like how you move on rock and so on. And I think when you bring that through to like taking a group to a climbing wall, bouldering potentially, or maybe part of your day, and there's all sorts of value to that. So it gives them, it means there's maximum engagement for a start. So you can have a lot of people doing a lot of things over a long time. And so if you think about that fun start, that fun part, that's brilliant. And then if you think about the learning that will happen beyond that, so, you know, do they know their inside edge from the outside edge? Then probably not as beginners, but maybe at the end of the session, they might have a bit of a Scooby about it. And I suppose, like, if you didn't have sort of personal knowledge of bouldering, and you chose to take a group to a wall and then do some sort of bouldering session, then, you know, there's all sorts of like things you need to be aware of that. So, like, for example, no good warm up and there's increased chance of risk. You know, bouldering is quite intensive on, like, it's quite immediate, it's quite powerful, it's quite intensive on certain parts of the body, and so the increase of a chance of an injury is most likely. And again, you know, you can go too hard, so you don't get positive outcomes. You might even put people off, like the session, for example. So I think, yeah, bouldering, brilliant for all sorts of good reasons on a personal level, certainly for the RCI. Second question from Lizzie: are there regular venues, crags, that are used for the RCI in North Wales? And would the assessor look positively or frown on you checking them out before the assessment? I suppose, yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Yeah, I suppose that really comes across on the mountain leader as well. You know, a lot of people like wonder where we might go, and that's, you know, it's a question that, you know, I can't specifically answer, because most of our time we're actually like dependent on the weather. So we sort of get up in the morning, we look at the weather, and then we make a choice about where we're going to go against the objectives for the day. So, however, there are only a number of places within North Wales, for example. So, you know, we use the Morwins, the Snowdonia area, the Cynethau, the Glyderau, predominantly. You know, we'll go down to the Rhynnel if we need to, but those are sort of predominant areas. And although it might seem a big area, you know, some of the things that's specific to the award, there are only limited areas we can go to. So coming back to the specific question on the RCI, but it will go across the ML as well. And I'm just looking for my notes when I do. So yeah, we'd love to take you somewhere unknown. You know, certainly on the RCI, it does ask us in our guidance notes, sort of like, try and take you to someone that's unknown to you. But, you know, with all the best will in the world, that's not always going to happen. There's only so many single pitch crags in the world that will work for the syllabus. And, you know, the benefit of taking you somewhere new and you looking at the guidebook and choosing a route and seeing you how to work around a crag would be great. But the reality is that, you know, we might not be able to. And we also need to consider driving times and weather and so on. And I think that would be the same of, like, you know, steep ground day on the mountain leader, for example. There's only so many places that work really well for that process, and so on. Maybe think of it like, would we frown upon it? Not at all. Well, I wouldn't. I think of it like work, you know, coming back to this idea of preparing you for the role of. So if we're preparing you for the role of a rock climbing instructor, then, like, it wouldn't be a great way of working as standard practice, turn up to a crag with a group that you've never been to before. That just doesn't seem a great idea to me. But, you know, part of it would be a pre-visit, perhaps. You know, maybe you go in person, climb at the crag prior to taking a group there. So you kind of know, you know, where the simple things like parking are, you know where, like, the public toilets are, you know the crag, you know the route, you know how to access the top and bottom. you know how to where the rigging points at the top are. And that means that when you come to sort of think about your planning and structure of the day, that you've got a good idea of like how that might work. So, you know, can I go in there and can I do some sort of movement skills somewhere around the crag at the bottom, or around the, you know, some little bouldery areas somewhere next to it, for example. And then am I aware where the safe group area will be? And then kind of when I get to the rigging element, you know, the more efficient I can be means there'll be more climbing time. So there's more engagement. So coming back full circle, there's only so many single pitches in North Wales, Lizzie. So do some good cragging, get out there, enjoy it, and undoubtedly we'll probably end up going back to one of them. So yeah, no, you know, there's no secret. I mean, you kind of know where we go, and it's the same for the mountain walkers. It's pretty obvious where you know, our known spots are. I suppose there's only so many good places. So go and enjoy your walking, go enjoy your climbing, and if we happen to pop back there on assessment, then that's our challenge to you know, to sort of see how we work that. Next question for Lizzie. What should you do if assessment? Sorry, let me start again. What should you do if on your assessment someone comes and takes over your belay point, sets up an anchor at the top of yours, gate crashes the route you're on? Yeah, good question. And it does happen, bizarrely. It's happened a few times to me with an assessment where we've turned up and me and the team are doing a really good job, and we're being really polite, and then someone just comes and gate crashes our party. And it's quite amusing to watch for an immediate sort of moment, and then you have to intervene. There's a thing called crag ethics, you know, and they're pretty strong in the UK, I would suggest. So essentially you turn up at a crag, you ask other climbers what they're up to, what their plans are, and then we just work around each other. And that's even on a personal note, I would suggest. So I would hope that wouldn't happen. So, however, in the unlikely situation it does, and you know, it has happened to me a few times now over the years. You know, if I'm working, then my primary responsibility is to keep people safe. So if that means that I need to move, then I will move. And I've had to do that, you know, at least 2 occasions now. So rather than sort of have a discussion with said party about it after they've suggested they're not going to like change their plan, the easiest solution for me and the safest solution for me is to actually just move across the crag somewhere else. So yeah, not an easy one. But I guess, you know, behind all of that decision making, as well as keeping people safe, but we're also ambassadors for the sport, and you know, and also for the industry. So, you know, I want to set a good example to everyone, you know, whether they're with me or not. But I'd like to try and set a good example so people can see we're actually doing our best we can. Yeah, ethics, interesting one there. Thanks, Lizzie. So David Eaton, working towards my ML assessment in the consolidation period, and one topic that concerns me is the assessment of the ML rote work. Perhaps Paul can talk about how he approaches assessing this, to what extent it's tested, and common mistakes to avoid in this area. Yeah, good. The main theme on, I would suggest the main theme on ML assessment around this, the hazards of steep ground, specifically the rote work, is we really want to see and hear preventative measures being put in place. You know, so you know, all the good things that we should be doing, and we should be doing this on a daily basis. So things like, you know, we're checking the weather forecast, we're working out have we worked with these people before, what do we know about them, what are their outcomes for the day, would this route fit those sort of criteria, you know, what sort of kit they've got, and all these sort of other things. And so therefore when we go onto the hill, we're able to make good decisions based on that, and keep people safe. So we shouldn't really get into that position. So on assessment, it's brilliant to hear when people are getting really excited about, you know, all the plans they're going to have, and all the things they do before they leave and go onto the mountain, and all the things they're going to do on the mountain to manage people and keep people safe. And you know, they're watching the clouds and they're watching the rivers go up and so on. So we don't get in a situation where we end up on a steep step. However, for the process of the syllabus, we need to put you in an environment that sort of sees this. So there's two ways of doing it. So some providers will go to a piece of rock and then just go through the process and just see the standalone pieces, and that's job done. The other way is for us to put you into a realistic situation where we make a journey through the mountain and we do our best to try and find awkward terrain which has a step in it. So, you know, if nothing else, it gives you real context of how the rope would be deployed in the future if you were there, rather than going to a standalone situation. So I quite often like do a mountain journey. So think of it perhaps as like a QMD day, generally day 2, QMD type day, which takes us through awkward terrain. So things that are a little bit grassy, a bit more broken rock, lots of vegetation, well off the paths, and perhaps places that, you know, people wouldn't have expected us to go, but really good ways, you know, really good ways that, you know, with the right team as a mountain leader, you could adequately take people up there. So it puts it into a context of a good adventurous day out. And then we'll get you to manage that area. So we'll give you areas to navigate through, and we would like you just to sort of like take us through that and chat to us about what you see and give us some examples of how you manage it with not using a rope. And then at some point, generally probably in descent most likely, because I guess that's where the rope would likely be used, we'd come across a step. Now some of these steps you might be able to go around to the left and avoid it, which would be the right answer, but for the purposes of today we would then ask you to go through the step using a rope technique, which essentially means you need to tie to the mountain and belay people down. So I think those are the two main ways: standalone piece of rock versus a mountain journey, with the mountain journey trying to give you real context of like where the rope might be deployed. Common mistakes. This one's pretty easy. On the belay, poor anchor. You know, it's as simple as that. Picking a wobbly rock is not good. It's just not safe. And I think, you know, you've got to put this into a real situation. So if you were there like a week later after you passed your assessment, and for some reason you were there again, or in that sort of similar situation with a group, and you pick something and, you know, you send somebody down it, and as you put some weight on the rock, rock wobbles, it wouldn't look good or give confidence and so on. So wobbling anchors is not good. So basically just kick the hell out of them. I mean, do it in a safe manner to yourself and make sure the rock can't, if you're a little bit nervous about it, make sure there's no one around, but just kick the hell out of the rock. Because, you know, if you're size 8 or size 10 feet can't move it, then there's probably a good chance that you'd be okay with it. I mean, there's a few other factors around the anchor. I mean, I'm just sort of like taking it sort of quite casually there, but you know, you just need to check that anchor really, really well. And then the other element is confidence roping. So confidence roping is something that I've used on a number of occasions as a mountain leader over the years. I haven't used any of the other rope techniques, so I haven't tied myself to a mountain in a summer mountain leader sort of position. But in terms of confidence roping, yeah, I've done that a few times now. And so again, the common mistakes on this, it's probably not practiced enough. As in, people just are not above the person they're looking after, and the rope is not tight. You know, it's just not tight. It doesn't give per person confidence. So, you know, the rope needs to be tight. There's a few other little factors around it, but keep that rope tight. You know, that's a good starting point. Hopefully that's answered that for you, David. And moving on to Jeremy. So Jeremy, what happens if there is heavy rain for the 2 days? So this is for RCI. But I'd probably say for the mountain leader as well, I'm quite well known for having bad weather on my assessments. I seem to get like some really poor weather and hit most of the storms. But you know, even on a mountain leader assessment, you know, there are days where we would meet in the morning, we would look at the weather forecast, and we'll all be looking at each other and be like, well, I wouldn't normally go out. And I would agree with you. And I'll be like, yeah, right answer, absolute right answer. But for the purposes of the assessment, we have to go out. You know, we just need to be careful about where we go. So even if we have like one of these like infamous storms come through the UK for the mountain leader process, and we're on day 1 of the expedition, we're still going out. Okay, so from the RCI point of view, good question. We've only got 2 days, so it's a tricky part. And I guess you're probably honing on the personal climbing element, I'd imagine, because all the other parts are not too bad. So you know, we need to go to climbing wall, we need to go into a crag and do some group rigging and so on. So we can do that in the rain, that's no problem. But on the personal climbing, that does present a problem for us. And that's our problem, really. You know, I wouldn't get stressed about it. I mean, our responsibility is to, when we run these courses, is to keep everyone safe anyway. And so, you know, the last thing you want to do is like, not be safe, but also not to inspire or give you confidence with the assessment process. So if we took you to a crag and asked you to like climb a severe in a pouring rain, I'm not sure it's going to be very positive for anyone, really. I'm not sure you'd be thanking me for that either. So yeah, there's ways we can assess your ability. You know, that's kind of why we need your logbook to be up to scratch, because we can use that to assess your personal climbing. We can use the climbing wall in a leading sense. So, you know, we'll quickly get a measure of your logbook against your, you know, lead climb in an indoor climbing wall, you know, really quickly. And one of the things we'll do, you know, North Wales here, for example, we're lucky in the respect that we have like a number of crags, north, south, and east, I suppose, and west. So, you know, with a little bit of local knowledge, we might be able to squeeze in somewhere. I mean, we are also allowed, we do have, we are allowed to bring you onto an easier grade as well. So part of that process might be that if we were like going to try and sneak in before the rains really came in, then maybe we could put you onto an easy grade, you know, whatever that might be, like a VDiff, for example. It's about the process of leading. And again, we would support that decision by your logbook and stuff, okay? So hopefully that's answered that one. And then last one Jeremy had was, how long is an abseil rope? How long an abseil rope is expected, or do most assessors have the facility to lend you one? I suppose this applies to any equipment in general. Yeah, it's a good one. So a provider will provide you a kit list for any award, and so you're kind of fully armed with what you need to bring. A semi-static rope or an abseil rope is probably one of those things you may not have yet. I mean, depends on where you are with work and so on, but it might be that you've used others or you haven't invested in it, because it's quite expensive as well, and it's not something we use very often. So best thing to do is just chat to your provider, because I will have ropes that we will provide. Some providers will only allow you to use their ropes anyway from a PPE point of view. And in the guidance notes for us, you know, we are encouraged, we are expected to encourage you to bring your own equipment. So it's not an absolute must, but if you have one, bring it along, be brilliant. If you don't, just chat to your provider, and undoubtedly, you know, they or we will provide it for you. In terms of how long, yeah, good question on that. It's not something I can answer easily. It depends on kind of, I mean, I think you just need to think about where you might use it long term, like work-wise beyond the RCI, because around here, some venues will take a really short rope, and other venues definitely require a 50-meter rope. So, you know, I think if you were just going to do a one-off purchase, then you can't go wrong with the 50 really, because that will like allow you to, certainly around here, that will allow you to rig everything and also put a line down if you needed to. So hopefully that's answered that one. So those are the last of, so those are the most prescribed ones. I'm just going to quickly flip over to the other side, because I've got a few minutes left, and just go back to a couple of questions. So Steve asked, are there a top 10 of the areas that usually catch people out on the assessment? Are there a top 10 of the areas that usually catch people out on the assessment? Yeah, no one likes going to the Norwins. Yeah, maybe there. I mean, I think people have this like stereotypical idea that the Mulwins is horrendous, and actually it's not. It's a beautiful place, and it's perfect for us. We like complex areas, but it is also, we tend to go there when it's bad weather, because it's a little bit lower and it's easier to get protection for the tents and so on. So unfortunately, You know, it is one of those areas that we do tend to go in poor vis and poor weather, because it's a little bit low. It gives us more protection from the elements. And yeah, and it is quite a complex area. So the Mulwins is one of them, I guess. In terms of the others, I don't think I can think of too many others, really. I think that's probably the main one that people worry about. But but again, you know, come back to that question earlier about visiting areas before. If you haven't been to the Mulwins and you plan on doing your assessment in North Wales, then it would be worthwhile just to sort of like go up there into the Mulwins, do like the Connect Mulwin Horseshoe, for example, which is a brilliant day. You know, you go over Connect and go over the 2 Mulwins, and it's like a 20k horseshoe, takes you through the old industrial slate quarries as well, Creaser and stuff. Phenomenal, like really good, and it gives you a flavour of the place, because it is quite tricky. But you know, please, you know, if we did go there on assessment, for example, then, you know, and we have poor vis, then, you know, we'll probably be navigating lake to lake, because it's a pretty tricky place, and therefore we would, you know, we kind of like compensate for that. So but yeah, it's a lovely place, it really is. Sharon, how beneficial would it be to get a lot of group management experience before assessment? So yeah, good question. So on the ML, it talks about going out and getting your QMDs, your minimum of QMDs, and then for the RCI, for example, it talks about getting your personal clients, but also some sort of group days as well. So if I took the RCI quickly first, you know, that the syllabus now forces you to get days with groups of some format, indoor climbing walk and outdoor climbing walk, and that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You know, how much time you will save when you actually go to work on your own single pitch crag will be phenomenal, because of what you've learned. And it'll be simple things, you know, how do you get 10 people into harnesses and it doesn't take half an hour, you know, because you've lost all that climbing time now. So that's the sort of things you'll learn, amongst with lots of games and stuff, and how to keep people engaged. In terms of the mountain leader, yeah, I think ideally it would be crucial, but that's the ideal word. Appreciate that, you know, you may not have access to those sort of groups, but what you'll get is a really quick, high learning curve. And again, it will come back to the basics, you know, the quick brief, the quick check, how you keep everyone together on the hill. And there are quite a few companies and organisations that do offer people who've got ML trained, for example, to offer opportunities to kind of actually be out with paying clients. You know, a lot of it's around the Three Peaks type style of work, mass footfall, I guess. But in terms of, like I say, what you'll learn from those days out will be really, really helpful. So if you're able to like go and shadow another ML or speak to a company and get an opportunity to do that, then yeah, it'd be brilliant. It'd be really good. And I think it does also shine through on assessment. You know, you can see people who've got that extra little bit of knowledge, because when we start talking about looking after people in the hill and managing people in the hill, you will really, you can really see their background. From Nick, so how fit do you need to be for assessment? Yeah, this is an interesting one. Yeah, it's a big worry for some people, I'm sure. I think currently I'm pretty worried about how fit I'm going to be after this as well. However, we're not going long distances over the 5 days. Yeah, we don't travel long distances. It's just physically impossible. You know, we won't cover the syllabus, you know, the key syllabus parts. We just won't have time. So we don't actually travel a great distance. I guess, you know, it's nice to go up and down a few mountains over the week, so get a few peaks in if the weather allows us to. I think on the expedition, which I guess is probably maybe where this question's aimed at specifically. Yeah, it's hard to put exact figures against it, because, you know, again, we'll tailor it a little bit against the team that we're with. But if you think about the Mulwins area that I've just talked about, you know, it's a 3-day expedition, so 2 nights out. You know, we'd start down near Connect, go over Connect, camp somewhere, maybe go over 2 other Mulwins next day, come back out, camp somewhere else, and then drop back out to Connect. You know, and you can see from a map, that's not a great deal distance, okay? So pretty short. I mean, another option, yeah, to get a bit of distance, for example, on an expedition is the Cynethai, you know, from Ogwyn Valley up to Aber Falls, for example. And that's about, if you did it in a straight line, you do it in one day, it's 20K a day, basically. So, you know, we'll do that over 3 days, if that makes sense. Lots of little diversions here and there. So we're not actually going long distances, we're focusing on the actual skill and the engagement. From Pete, if you're assisting on a walk as a back marker for an ML on a route that you have not done before, can this be classed as a QMD or just a standard MD? I previously had to assist take people up or back down when there have been issues in pace and ability and the lead group has gone ahead. Oh, okay. So basically you're saying, I think from what you're saying, Pete, is if you're part of a group at the moment with a mountain leader, and you're like the assistant or back marker, and then if you've been asked to go back down, whether that would classify as a QMD. I guess like hard to say without the true context, but I guess if you looked at the sort of the strict QMD criteria of like the journey time, significant summit, for example, whether those are ticked or not. But the thing to do, Pete, would be like tick it down as a QMD if you want, and then you know, when we receive your logbooks, and we have access to your logbooks pretty early on. So when you book a course and we get your course number, we can then register you with the board to say that we have you logged you onto this particular course. We then have access to a couple of like tabs on your logbook, so we can see quite quickly whether you've got the minimum 40 QMD. So, you know, put it down as a QMD if you feel you've got it, and then we can have a quick check of it. I mean, it is probably fair to say that the criteria is a minimum. So, you know, if you've got 40, then there might be a few that you might be having a question mark over. So it's worth having a few more under your belt. And so I think people who are comfortable with the award, passing the award, and their logbook specifically will have an access of sort of like 60 QMDs, for example. So then the actual process is quite comfortable for them. Linda, on assessment and managing the group, do we pretend that the other candidates are our clients or our peers, or will we be told? Yeah, exactly. So any task you're asked to do, on assessment should be really clear. And if you're not sure, just ask. So in terms of managing a team through a steep ground area, then yeah, we'd set the scene really clearly. So it could be that you're looking after the group, or they're just, you know, experienced peers. I mean, for me, I've seen role play go wrong really badly on these situations, so I don't tend to do role play anymore. I tend to treat everyone as, you know, as peers, but you're just in charge and just sort of demonstrating and managing us through it. But yeah, tasks should be clear. It should be really clear. And like I say, if you're not sure, just ask to clarify the situation. So Steve, yeah, so I didn't mean geographical areas, I meant skill areas. Sorry for the confusion. Let me just zip back up. Okay, so that's the question on the top 10 of the areas that you usually carry. Oh, okay, I understand now. So are there a top 10 of the areas that you usually catch people out in assessments? So that would be based against skills. Yeah, just pausing to think. I think there's two key areas there. Yeah, navigation being probably like bringing the most of it. So contour interpretation and poor visibility. So contour interpretation is, I think a lot of people get very, very worried about it. I think if you follow the guidelines of the handbook, then you'll probably be in the right place. So what I mean by that is when you go and do your mountains, try and get off the paths. Try and get off the paths as much as you can. So try and pick places like the Mulwin's, perfect. And try and pick places where you don't know very well and you're not on a path all day. So although something like the Glitter Iron might be an amazing day out, or Triven, for example, around here, they're really good quality days out, but you do tend to be on the paths a great deal. Whereas if you zip down to the Mulwin's, then, you know, within quite a short period of time you'll be off. And it then forces you to then look at the map. It forces you to then look at the contours, because there's not a great deal up there apart from lakes. So it will really reinforce like your contour interpretation. And then the other thing I mentioned was poor visibility. So poor visibility is about confidence. So if you haven't done much of it, you haven't been out night navving much before, then it will really shine through on your night nav, on the assessment. And it's more about like, I have made it or I haven't made it, or what do I do next? And if you've been out and practiced it a few times, then you'll have a few ideas up your sleeve. And I think the key word on poor visibility is confidence, is just demonstrating confidence in the skill that you have and then applying it on the ground. So that would be the second big area that catch people out. I think rope work is not so much these days. The wobbly anchor doesn't pop up very often, and we're lucky because if it's happened on the first day or two, we've got the expedition to address it as well, so we can revisit it through the expedition. I hope I got that one right, Steve. Okay, brilliant, good. It's on the list. Brilliant. Just replied, Sharon. Hey, cool. I think that's everything. I think I've got all the answers, or all the questions there, and all the answers there. So if anyone's got, so hopefully that's been useful. Hopefully it's answered your main questions. And if anyone has anything else, then you're most welcome to email me. You can find my details on. Can't even think, I'm lost track now. I think on mountain training, and so you're most welcome to. I mean, we are here to, like I mentioned earlier, to support you and help you. And I think any provider will, honestly, will welcome a question on an email or a phone conversation to make sure that you're happy and comfortable with the process. And if you're unsure and you've booked your assessment or you're about to book your assessment, and you want to us to check your logbook, for example, or you want us to confirm what you think then just ask us. We are here to help. Okay, we're not an obstacle to the award in any shape or form. So and then beyond all that, Joe did ask me to mention that I host everything up here in North Wales for mountain training, so I'm the regional coordinator for North Wales, so we do quite a bit up here, and I know all the other coordinators throughout the UK are working working hard at the moment, and other times as well. So thanks very much for supporting the MTA. It's been a good evening, and like I say, if you have any questions, then please let me know. Thanks very much, and hopefully it's been useful.